Neil will talk about that because today we'll discuss previous year questions of mains. I'll discuss that. Agenda for today is very simple, very important. We'll talk about the nature of revolt of 1857. Then we'll talk about the 1858 Government of India Act, which is going to change the Indian structure itself, or rather the English structure. We'll talk about the impact. We'll talk about White Mutiny. Thereafter, we'll go into rise of nationalism, and we'll discuss the origin of INC. That is the larger agenda here. Once we're done with that, we will do previous year questions. But today, this week, we'll concentrate on mains questions because that is equally important. You need to know how things come through. Sanjeev, all of them did not end in 1857. 1858, 59, some areas 1858, 59. If you attempt prelims and not clear it, is it a counted? Yes, that is the basic point. If you go and give prelims, that is a count. Okay. So, yesterday was about discussing the different theaters. We discussed Jagdishpur, Kanpur, Delhi, and thereafter Lucknow. We understood Rohilkhand. We also discussed the nature. What is the nature of the revolt? Why do I call it a revolt of 1857 and not the first war of independence or rebellion of 1857? And we were able to establish very comprehensively the weaknesses and the fact that it is a revolt. And what was the word we used for it? What was the important word we used for it? It's a revolt, and what is the nature of that revolt? Very good. It is a restorative revolt. It is more than a mutiny. It is more than a mutiny. However, it is less than a war of independence. And the restorative word was that because it had not a new worldview, but a worldview which was about bringing the old powers back. So be it Mughal India, be it Nana Sahib, be it Rani Jhansi. The basic point is it is restorative because it is looking towards the past to replace the present rather than bringing in a new kind of concept, basically going back to the old order itself. So we called it a restorative revolt. We did not call it a war of nationalism or war of independence because there was no interconnection, there was no coordination, there was no concept of nationalism. And today I will, for a working definition, tell you what nationalism actually means. Actually means. So we discussed on that day that basically the nature and character, there were three words which we used interchangeably, but there is the right word to use. Mutiny is about trivialization. It's about making the this major event into a small event. Rebellion is about getting concessions from somebody. So you rebel to get concessions. However, revolt is about destroying power. And that is why the word revolt goes well. That is why the word revolt goes well. However, we need to decide what is the character. And the character is what is called restorative in nature. No concept of an Indian nation. Delhi and Bahadur Shah acted as symbol of the old world. Rumors and suspicions were what brought people together. Wanted to replace the old colonial structure with the older regime. And all of this was just a manifestation of the factors we discussed yesterday. Simple point, very simple point is that it is restorative in character. And we already know the reason for that, which is no unity, old world view. The character was also limited to no aims, no common goals, and the fact that there is no concept of a united nation. Now, very simply, restorativeness is something which is considered not a negative character, but the 1857 will be used later as a symbol of resistance. But generally, for the purpose of the examination, we will always not say that it is a war of independence. We'll also always take a middle ground here. We'll say it's more than a mutiny, but it's less than a war of independence. It's in between these two, which is the fact that it is basically a revolt for restoration. We can all agree to this. This is what we discussed extensively yesterday. Ashwarman, I have seen your email. I have to reply to them. I have 100 plus pending. I will reply. Don't worry. Restorative means to restore. Restore the old world order. Okay. Now, what is more important, we discussed this aspect also, that one major characteristic of the revolt of 1857 was that it was basically Hindu Muslims coming together, and how the British is going to find the formula to why greater than mutiny, because it was not just Sipahis. It was people coming together, be it in only cities, but it was more than just Sipahis. It was not just a random army revolting everywhere. People revolted, people did come forward, but only in a limited sense. And Hindu Muslim unity is a testimony to the fact that it is more than a mutiny, because in each theater we see people coming together under the same banner itself. Thereafter also were able to establish that it was not a planned event. This is where we stopped, that it is not a planned event. Yes? Can we all be on the same page? Because now I am going to discuss something very important, which is the impact of the revolt of 1857, which is much more important. Okay. So by this point of time, we have this. We now know the causes. We need to know the course. We know the nature. Now it is about deciding what is the impact. The questions will come from cause, nature, and impact. This is the areas out of which questions can be made in mains. And I have the mains previous year questions for you. So I will show you also how they've actually asked questions from this area only. Now let's discuss then the impact. Can we start? How can the big revolt happen unplanned? Sachin, that is what I showed you. It's a revolt which happens in different sectors, but there was no planning at all. If had been planning, there would be correspondence between the theaters. No planning at all. Everywhere the issues were local, were regional, and were linked to the larger spark of Barrackpore and Meerut. But that was not meaning that they had a way that we will automatically go this day by this day by this day. There was no set plan. No set plan at all. And if there had been a set plan, the revolt of 1857 had been different. So the first major change or impact is, it was a rude shock. It was a rude shock to the British and East India Company. They had not anticipated the revolt. First, that they had no indication. It was so spontaneous that the British never had the idea that the Sipahis could do something like this and create a much bigger movement in that sense. So it's a rude shock. They have no idea what actually happened. That is why it will take them 2 years to figure it out. Second, is the fact that the structure of administration or colonial exploitation changed, which I have to discuss with you. Third is the concept of the company rule in India ended and direct parliamentary control, crown rule. This I have to discuss with you. These 2 points I will discuss with you. And fourth is going to be the British in India will now follow a different strategy to control the princely states and princes, which is called non-intervention. Basically, there are four major changes. In the sense that first impact is that the British did not anticipated anything. A big shock to the British. Major rude shock, had no idea. 5 to 10,000 Europeans dead. No idea what was happening. Sati Chora Ghat. There is full chaos. But what is more important to our story is that the British structure changed both in India and a little bit in India, but more in Europe and in England. And that in turn meant that the crown rule entered, or the company rule ended, along with the aspect that now they will deal with all these princely states and princes in a very cautious way. They could see that what was common to all the theaters was the restorative nature, which means that all princes were the basic leadership. So they wanted to make sure that the leadership doesn't in a way come out of the princes who had grievances, but from somewhere else. At least the princes remain loyal to the British. If you understand superficially these 4 points, I would like you to understand how the structure of India changed. Can we discuss that? The East India Company structure, what is the real change in that sense? Very good. Now, as of 1857, how I'm discussing and said the second and third point. Just be patient. Second and third point I'm telling you. So as of 1857, what was the structure of the British? What was the structure of the British? Subarna, it was believed that East India Company is not responsible enough to hold on to India. Listen to me. Now in England, you have what? The BOC, the COD, Board of Control, and Court of Directors. Then they act in India via the Governor General of India. He has his own legislative and executive council. Now, he thereafter controls the Governor of Bengal, Governor of India, of Madras, and Governor of Bombay. This is what the structure we saw. Yes or no, everyone? Last when we stopped at the Charter Act of 1853, this is the structure where we stopped, right? Yes. Now basically, who controls India? Technically, the East India Company controls India via the Board of Control and the Court of Directors, and they via the Governor General of India. This is the England setup. This is the Indian setup. Now, as soon as the revolt happens, revolt of 1857 happens, now the Europeans being dead with major shock and a lot of Europeans dead, it was now believed that East India Company was not capable to hold on to India, and there was a need for change. It's basically your father giving you the car to drive, but then you hit it. You take the car and hit it in a tree, and now your father says that you are not capable enough to hold on to this responsibility because you have created the 1857. So the parliament will very simply argue, that between 1757 and 1857, these 100 years of East India Company have created this consequence. So now the East India Company will be considered or will be held responsible for the revolt of 1857, in which a lot of Europeans died. So now it will be decided that let us take away the most prized possession of the British away from private rule, company rule, and give it to the parliament itself, And therefore, what is called the Government of India Act 1858 will change the structure. Are you getting the point? Why did the East India Company now be held responsible for what they did, and why is there a need for change? They have been held responsible for the 1857 revolt. So basically, the British want now direct control. Enough is enough. You have killed people because of your 100 years of rule. So the Government of India Act 1858, I'm again explaining the second and third point only. If you will pay attention, I'm saying structure of administration and exploitation changed, company rule ended, and crown rule started. So first is, this is the structure of exploitation in India, and now the revolt of 1857 has happened. So the new structure and the new control was going to be like this. Now pay attention, please. Please pay attention. You had the COD and the BOC. They controlled the Governor General of India, who has his Executive Council and Legislative Council, and he controls the governors of Bombay, Bengal, and Madras. Now this structure will be replaced, and the major change is going to be most important change is going to be that the board of control and the court of directors will be abolished, and now India will be controlled via a body called the India House, which is headed by a person called the Secretary of State to India. Basically, he's a cabinet level minister. He has 15 members to help him. And he reports to the Prime Minister of Britain. And now the Governor General gets one more tag attached to his name, and he becomes Governor General, and the most important word, Viceroy of India. So he's still called Governor General of India. Remember, a major confusion which students see is Governor General tag was not removed. It was just that he was now called Governor General and Viceroy of India. Thereafter, the basic structure remains the same, which is Governor of Bengal, Governor of Bombay, and Governor of Madras. And he has his Executive Council and Legislative Council. Now, basically, this change is called the Crown Rule beginning, or Crown Rule is introduced. So, the Secretary of State to India is basically a cabinet minister. He is a cabinet minister. His level, his rank is basically of a cabinet minister. Cabinet minister level is not the Viceroy of India. Again, the problem is this is only England. This is in India. So the main change is happening in India or England? India or England? Now you are saying the crown is not involved. But who is the ultimate executive in India? When you act, the Prime Minister acts in India in the name of whom? The President. So the Prime Minister of England will act in whose name? So the Crown. It's not difficult. The Crown symbolically controls the Prime Minister of Britain. The Prime Minister of Britain controls the Secretary of State to India. He controls the Governor General, and now called Viceroy because he is the representative of the Crown in India, Viceroy of India, and he thereafter controls the Governor. The only point here is that this machinery is in England, this is in India. So the main change is actually happening in England. It is actually happening in England. It is a nominal power, it is a de facto power, it is a de jure power, whatever power it is. Still the name of the name, when you work for the Crown, you work in the name of the Crown. Till today, the Prime Minister of Britain is answerable to the Crown. So that is why it's called Crown Rule. We don't call it Prime Minister's rule, it's called Crown Rule. Because now ultimately the British Prime Minister controls via the Secretary of State, which is nothing but a minister in his cabinet. His means Prime Minister's cabinet. I am telling you that this is England part. Then how is he sitting in India? Please listen to me, concentrate. You are trying to type something, listen to me. When I am saying that this machinery is in England, then how can Secretary of State be in India? Simple point. This was the structure. Court of Directors, Board of Control the Governor General of India, and the Governor then controls the Governor of India, then controls the Governor of the provinces. The ultimate control was the Board of Control, which had all the power. But the Board of Control was of the East India Company. That is why company rule. Now they have just removed this whole section. They have removed this section and they have now made it answerable. Basically, the Governor General of India and now Viceroy, because He represents the crown in India and therefore a viceroy, but he is now answerable to a minister. Like you have the home minister, the finance minister, he is a minister in the cabinet of the East of the Prime Minister of Britain, and therefore ultimately he is answerable to the parliament, and the parliament is in a way under the crown. So simple point, it's not indirect control. There is a direct answerability in this chain. The answerability in this chain works like this. The Governor General will take all decisions in consonance with the Secretary of State. Then who was the GGI when Crown Rule reintroduced? That I'll tell you. You want facts. Listen to the structure, canning. First, are you understanding the change which is happening in England? I want everybody's consent. Please, you have to understand this point. Very simple point, but complicating it. Crown rule, because ultimately everybody is answerable to the crown. Company will just now be a company and we don't have any attachment that I tell you what East India Company was doing. Company will cease to rule India. That is it. So the basic change happens in England. The basic change happens in England, where now there's a chain of command vis-a-vis the East India Company is removed. East India Company is removed. They said enough of your rule in India. You have created the revolt of 1857. So therefore, he is called the viceroy because he indirectly represents the crown. He indirectly represents the crown. This is why the word viceroy. And in England, all ministers are sometimes called secretary to home secretary, secretary to finance secretary. We call them finance minister, home minister, defense minister. They call it defense secretary, home secretary, secretary to, that way they call it. That is why the word is coming in that sense, Secretary of State. He literally sits in the cabinet of the Prime Minister of Britain. So can we now accept the fact that it is a new structure of East India, of rule in India? Yes, then I move on. Okay. So on 2nd August 1858, the Act for the Better Government of India, or the Government of India Act 1858, was introduced. Now the Crown was empowered to appoint a Governor General of India also and Governor of Presidencies. And in accordance with the Queen's Proclamation, which I will show you, the title of Viceroy, Crown's personal representative, was added to the Governor General of India tag. The supreme executive and legislative authority in India henceforth was to be called Governor General of India and the Viceroy. While the authority over India was previously yielded by the Board of Control, now it will be vested in the Secretary of State for India, aided by 15 members. The office of the Board of Directors, the Court of Directors and Board of Control will be abolished. This new Secretary of State will now be heading a ministry, new ministry which is created, which is called India House. All power will now be yielded in the British cabinet via the Prime Minister. The Indian civil services will now report to the Governor General of India and Viceroy, and ultimately to the Secretary of State. And the ICS will be appointed previously also on the basis of competition, just to reiterate that point. Simple to simple point, I'm again going to create the structure. Please pay attention. The simple point is, now you have the Crown. The Crown controls the Prime Minister of Britain. He has a new ministry called India House, headed by, this is the new ministry, headed by Secretary of State for India. He will have 15 members to help him. He will then work via the Governor General of India and Viceroy, plus his Executive Council and his Legislative Council. And thereafter, he will control the different governors. Simple to simple, Crown, PM, Secretary of State, GGI and Viceroy, Executive Council, now is this clear, please? 15 members including, provision excluding. What do you mean by that? The question is self-contradictory. BOC and COD were private individuals, and yes, they were previously private individuals, now taken away. Don't get caught up there. They were the part of the East India Company, and as much as they may be nominated by anybody, the basic point of the matter is that they were part of the East India Company. Was the Viceroy directly responsible to the Crown? Technically not, because there's a whole chain of command. Consequences impact, same thing. Okay. Governor General and Viceroy is the same person. Now please listen to me this, and I go forward with the Queen's Proclamation. There are 4 facts which you need to know, because you will Google it, you will get it wrong, because there's the wrong information on Google. Who is the first governor of Bengal? First governor of Bengal. Who is first governor of Bengal? Okay. Robert Clive. Good. First Governor General of Bengal. Very good. Warren Hastings. Then Governor General of India. Very good. William Bentinck. And first Governor General and Viceroy of India, Lord Canning. Lord Canning. Done, everyone? Can we say it becomes a public company? The company ceases to exist. Not a company. It's not a company. It's now direct government of Britain controls India. So you don't have to change your perception. Don't have to change it. Did it get from imperialism to colonialism? No, colonialism was already there. Nature of colonialism changed. Are we all on the same page? Can I move to Queen's Proclamation? Please? Okay. Now. The next thing which happened was on 1st November 1858, the Queen, which is Queen Victoria, the Crown, now technically assuming the direct responsibility of the Indian administration, she proclaims the following things. Though she is not called Empress of India till 1876, she'll be called Empress of India, but that will only be in 1876, not in this act. You see, all of the proclamation areas technically have causes within them. So this is how the British British technically understands the 1857. The Viceroy is the direct representative of the Crown. Lakshmikant says it. That is why Lakshmikant teaches polity and I teach history. Direct concept, direct representation of Crown technically doesn't mean that he is directly answerable to the Crown. It is all symbolic. Victoria is the Queen. Name is Queen Victoria. Stop reading Lakshmikant for history, because he will write it from a political perspective. He says direct representative of the Crown, but basically he is still meaning the same thing, which is that Viceroy word is added because he is considered a direct representative of the Crown in India. But there is a way in which there's a whole system. Can we discuss how the British understood via the proclamation? Okay. Now, the first proclamation which he made as the now Queen of India in a way, no state to be annexed. No state to be annexed. What is the cause behind, what is the underlying cause for this proclamation or this declaration? When we discussed the causes of the 1857, very good. So basically, they were able to understand that direct and indirect conquest was one of the reasons. Very good. No more intervention in religious matters. What is this? Very good. Socio-religious reform seen as a reason. No religious conversion by force. Lex Loci Act and missionary activity. No discrimination in the army services. Military culture. Now do you see that basically the British got it right? They were able to understand that all the causes of the British, of the revolt of 1857 were the underlying changes which the East India Company was making in India. So the proclamation is like the Queen Victoria saying, no, we will not follow what the East India Company did. We will not follow what the East India Company did. So basically, as soon as the revolt of 1857 is over, by 1859, they were now controlling more or less all of these theaters. Why is that the revolt of 1857 is considered a decisive moment, or what we call as a watershed moment, or it is called as a shift or a change in India? It is called because before it used to be the East India Company which controlled India. East India Company had its own structure, BOC and COD, and they were technically following a political policy of what we call as direct and indirect conquest. The socio-economic and religious now will be abandoned, and basically after it, the Crown via the Parliament will control India. Secretary of State was now the new power over the Governor General. Governor General and Viceroy new title added. And basically all employed with East India Company, all employees transferred to Crown. All are answerable to the Crown. This is all after the Government of India Act 1858 and Queen's Proclamation. Can I now close this topic and move on to White Mutiny and then to nationalism? Is this making sense? This is making sense. Very good. There were other changes also. And the strategic changes which happened were actually in the army. The first change which they brought in was that they changed the ratio, which is that before the 1857, there used to be 1 European for 5 Indians, which is 1:5. 1 European officer over 5 Indians. Whilst after 1857, it became 1 European over 2 Indians. And in Madras and Bombay, this was Bengal, Madras and Bombay, it became 2:5, which is 2 European officers over 5. This was seen as the basic point. The simple to simple point is, whilst the major changes which happen in India are via the Government of India at 1858 and Queen's Proclamation, everything which was East India's machinery has now become the Crown machinery, and the Governor General Viceroy, the new title which the Viceroy is added to the Governor General, represents this change itself. And the Secretary of State is now the new boss of Governor General and Viceroy, who is then answerable to the Prime Minister, then answerable to the Crown. So I hope there is no confusion here, because I have been now repeated this a 5th time. There should be no confusion. The structure is very, very simple and straightforward. That the Crown controls the Prime Minister. Prime Minister has a new ministry under him, India House, headed by the Secretary of State with 15 members. And thereafter, the Governor General and Viceroy has his Executive Council, Legislative Council, and he controls the governors. So this is the more substantial changes. At the more grassroots level, the Crown comes in, and the first thing which it does is it changes the structure of the way there are how many Europeans over how many people. Older policy of excluding Indians from officers' corps was strictly maintained, that no Indian will become an officer. All sensitive posts were reserved for Europeans. European troops were kept in key geographical military locations. Caste-based battalions were raised. Now, this is the basic point. They went back to the concept that we will not try to touch their caste. Let them have their caste-based battalions. And now, soldiers were not allowed to read newspaper, journals, and nationalist publication. Therefore, de-radicalize the whole army. Simple point, before the East India Company, under the East India Company, there was 1 European officer over 5 Indian soldiers or Sipahis. Now there's 1 European officer over 2 Indian Sipahis. That is the major change. They have increased the number of Europeans so as to make sure that another 1857 never happens. Another 1857 never happens. Now I have to discuss a very interesting thing which happened between 1859 and 61. Can I discuss that with you? We are all on the same page, no issues at all, right? Okay, perfect. All employees transferred to Crown, meaning that everybody who was answerable to the East India Company is now answerable to the Crown. It should not be almost. What is the issue? What is almost here? I have told you the structure changed. I told you that the ratio changed. The whole concept changed. The crown is, the company is gone and the crown is there. But somehow now when the company is gone, you have created an attachment with the company. Company is gone. Everything is inherited by the crown, and that is it. End of story. How did they get appointed? This, that, don't worry about the company. They were the ruthless monster. What they did. Forget them. Understand the new structure, because now when I'm going to teach you constitutional development, the changes will happen in this structure now. Now, a major event which happened after the revolt of 1857 is actually called very interestingly the White Mutiny. The White Mutiny. Now, can I discuss with you what the White Mutiny is? Secretary of State will be, why will he be in India? India Governor General is the Karta Dharta. There are two faces to colonialism. One who sits in England, Secretary of State, and one who sits in India, Governor General Viceroy. That's it. So why would he be in India? If he is answerable to the Prime Minister, why would you call him to India? So that it takes him 6 months to go back to England. Basic, use your logic. There has to be somebody who heads it in England, somebody who heads it in India. India, the Governor General and Viceroy is the ultimate power. But he is technically not the only one who is ruling India. He is not the one who rules India. The one who rules India is basically the Secretary of State, who then rules for the Prime Minister, who then rules for the Crown. One in England, one in India. That is how they create the concept. Pre-MCM, if you want to call them. Okay. Now, what is the White Mutiny? Standalone event, interesting event. Now, before 1857, the company army, one of you asked me this question also, I am now telling you, the company army, which is under the control of the Governor General of India, had the following structure. It had two components. It has two components. One, the Royal British Army, and one was called European Forces. The Royal British Indian Army and European Forces. What does it mean? Basically, under the charter, certain number of British Royal Army given to East India Company. For example, 1,000 men. Who will pay the salary of the Royal British Indian Army? The Crown. Basically, the Crown pays the salary of the British Indian Army because they were sanctioned under the charter. So think of it that the company today, a company has the Indian Army protecting it. So does, for example, Tata give salary to the Indian Army? Yes or no? No. So same way, this was given, the initial charter itself gave them this right that they can have a certain number of men which can protect them in the name of the crown. Now they get their salary from the crown, and their salary was quite less. It was, for example, fixed at £100 a year. It's a salary which is like standard salary. However, can you think, or do you think that the British can survive in India with 1,000 men? No. So what they did was that they raised their own private army of men who were employed under the East India Company. This is like the private security of a company. But in order to attract people, the salary was more. For example, 500 per year. The Indian Sipahis were added to both the armies. Indians could enter this also. Indians could enter this also. But all officer rank is obviously with the Europeans. Now, basically, therefore, the company army is two armies together. The Royal Army plus European forces is equal to the company army. So they have their what is called state, or what is given by the crown army, and the other, which is basically their own army which they raised. Is there a problem with regards to the structure? No. Now tell me one thing. When the crown is going to take over, will the European forces be very happy to get £100 a year and their all allowances will be removed? No? So, basic concept. As soon as Government of India Act 1858 comes, the company army, which had two components, Royal British Army and the European forces, with this act, this will get abolished. It will get abolished. And they will be merged with the Royal Army. Therefore, the allowances and attractive salary was taken away. So, European forces officers rebelled. And when the army rebelled, what do we call it? When the army rebels, what do we call it? But because ये गोरों की म्यूटनी है, तो ये white mutiny. White mutiny. It's literally a white mutiny. Because the European forces officers who are white Britishers, they will rebel. So this is white mutiny. White mutiny is literally when the European forces, who are the major chunk in the army, got a lot of attractive pay. Once they get merged with the Royal British Army, they rebel. Simple example. Simple example. For example, a company has Indian Army and it has its private small security service. The salary of the Indian Army soldier is 50,000 rupees, but the salary of the security guard given by that company is 80,000 rupees because people want him to enter into that service. Now, the company is taken over by Government of India. So the security guards are added to the Indian Army. So they will go down from how much? 80,000 to 50,000. So they will never be happy. And if they're not happy, end of story. Indian soldiers are already rebelled. This story is not about Indians. Then we would have called it Brown Mutiny. That is nothing but revolt of 1857. This mutiny is about white British officers rebelling. White British officers rebelling. There used to be multiple nationalities also. They had some German, some Irish, some Scottish, some English, some French also. That is not the point. The point of the matter is the private army of the East India Company gets disbanded. Therefore, the whites mutiny. So, white mutiny. Will you be able to identify the reasons in the examination? Yes or no? Done? So, let us discuss white mutiny. White mutiny was the unrest that occurred at the dissolution of the European forces of the East India Company in India during the mid-19th century in the wake of 1857. Until 1861, there were two separate military forces under the British control in India. One comprised of those units of the British Army serving tours of duty in India, known as the Queen's Army. The other one was the units of the East India Company. The company's troops were a mixture of European regiment of Britons recruited specifically for service in India and native regiments recruited for locally with British officers. So basically, it's a full mixture. It's a full mixture. It's the age-old concept, private job versus government job. Once the private job goes away and goes to the private government job, the people who had the private job rebel. Now, units of the East India Company received bhatta extra allowance of pay to cover for various expenditures relating to operations out of home territory, while the British armies did not. After the mutiny, the native units of the company forces in 1857, the Crown took over the affairs of the company. Until the takeover of the company's activities, its units were transferred basically to the Crown. In negotiation of terms of transfer of the Governor General, Canning did not give the European forces notice to the transfer to the Queen's Army. And therefore, once they will be transferred to the Queen's Army, they will in turn rebel. And everyone, I will do previous year questions with you, but mains previous year questions with you. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Okay. Perfect. Impact of white mutiny. They rebelled. The British kill all of them. The British know only one thing. See, they are white men. I don't care. They were killed, all of them. This is between 1859 and 1861. So I care about the revolt of 1857. This is one thing which is there happening in the background. Are we all on the same page? Can we now shift to nationalism? They killed their own men, so they don't have any morality. When did British have morality? They will kill their own men. The British will do anything to rule in India. They will kill you also, me also. That's not the problem. Okay. See, please, there's a problem that we have certain notions in our mind, which is called modern notions of democracy, justice, rebellion, rights. These don't exist in 1857. Either you comply or you don't comply. The British will do what they want to do. It's not a democratic society where you go and protest for something. You'll be shot if you will protest. That's the basic point. Okay, now, yes, they are the barbarians, yes, but they called us the barbarians. Now, what we need to understand is from this point forward, I pivot to nationalism, and our story with regards to nationalism starts from this point forward. Now, the larger, please, now tell me one thing. Before I go to this section, I want to consolidate with you via timeline. Can I do that? We can just revise the whole company period. We can? Very good. Now, your main question is going to be, do I need to learn this? Yes. This is important. First Farman, Jahangir, entry into Bengal, Shah Shuja Farman, Farooq Siyar Farman, Battle of Plassey, Battle of Buxar and Diwani rights transferred. Indian monopoly gone. Chinese monopoly gone. Thereafter, 1853, open competition. Revolt of 1857. Government of India Act, 1858. Now, do you realize that we've actually not gone far in the story? We've actually not gone quite far in the story. It's 64 in the battle, 64, 65 Diwani rights. We've actually not gone too far in the story, but this story is interesting because this is the period of advent and expansion. This is this is a period of direct conquest, beat Carnatic, Mysore, Maratha or Sikhs. To be precise, I can take this timeline a little bit backwards. I can take it a little bit backwards. What date would this be? If I had to take it a little bit backwards. What is the first battle, first date? Guess. Yes. 1746, first Carnatic War starts, 46 to 48. The more interesting part of the story is this, which is modern education and missionary activities. And if you have to make it even more interesting, this point is from where? This point is from where economic exploitation will start. Land revenue, commercialization, deindustrialization, and drain. But the arrow means that it will keep on going on. It will keep on going on. And if we add one more dimension into this, after 1813 until 1858 is a period of British based social reform. So if you look at it, we have only been able to cover a very small part of our history, which is called Company Rule, 1613, 1858. So rest in peace, or rather rest in chaos, the Company Rule in India. Right? But Yashika, the missionaries will still become now a part and parcel of Indian society. Can we now enter the new phase of our analysis if this timeline is clear? Don't have to make it, you get it in annotated PPT. Now this will become a standard feature. I'll play with timelines quite a lot. I will start with timelines, I will end with timelines. But is everybody clear about Company Rule? Basic understanding, basic facts, basic concepts. Yes? British based reform, infanticide, sati, widow remarriage, that is. British based social reform is what we call as legislative reform. Okay. Now, see, timelines are of master things, not of small things. This timeline will now revise everything you've done till this point. Now, what I want from you is that you understand what is nationalism. Can I do that? Everybody is with me, there's no issue. Unnati, no one cares about the Portuguese. Whatever questions can be asked was already I showed you. No one cares about the Portuguese. There will be a backstory in this whole story itself. Okay. Now, I'm coming to International Congress. You want a screenshot? We discuss the concept of nationalism and then we take a break. Okay. I'm not sure, Basavaraj, about that. Okay. Now, the question is, what is nationalism? We have to now work out a working definition of nationalism, because then we can understand why do we call this phase as nationalism. You will find different definitions in different places. Now I'm pivoting towards our new phase, Crown Rule. And there are three things which are considered as pivotal as pivotal to we believe that nationalism is rising. Nationalism is rising. Now, what is nationalism then? Nationalism is a sense of unity, based on a shared history and future. Basically, listen to me as I'm explaining to you. We all are united by the fact that what I'm teaching you is our history, and we all have a shared future. When we develop this sense that we all have a shared future and a shared history, that we all come from the same place and we are going to the same place, then we believe that the nationalistic understanding is rising. Basically, it's not just unity. It's unity based on the concept that we all face the same fate. We all have the same fate in the larger context. So it's not just unity, it's about your interest, my interest, everybody's interest embodied in the nation. If India goes up today, becomes a 5 trillion economy, we go up and become the part of the 5 trillion economy. If India goes down, we go down with India. We are the same people who are ruled by Ashoka. We are the same people who have Indo-Islamic rulers. We're the same people who are exploited by the British. We all, one thing which links us, you and me, is the fact that we all had the same history. We all have the same history. And irrespective of our location, our ethnicity, our caste, our varna, our gender, whatever it may be, we all believe and belong to this nation, and we have a shared future. Is this point clear? That only when we start to develop this concept that we all are the same and we are going in the same direction, we believe that nationalism is rising. Now, second, we develop certain symbols and concepts which represent and reflect our unity. So now we are united. Now we are united. But how do we express that unity? This is the expression of that unity is equally important. What is the symbol which represents you and me, our shared future and history? What represents that? The national flag. India represents you and me. That is one shared symbol which we all have. We have the Indian flag, we have the Government of India emblem, we have the Rashtrapati Bhavan, we have the Parliament, we have the Prime Minister, we have the President, we have all our MPs, all of India's culture. All the symbols which we have created are basically from the national anthem to the national song, to the national bird, to the national food, be it anything. We all have symbols which we think are something which go beyond our regional identities. Be it in Kanyakumari or be it in Jammu, be it in Arunachal Pradesh or be it in Gujarat, be it anywhere in India, the national flag is something which is a shared symbol, is a symbol which expresses our unity. So only when we try to express our unity, we therefore now believe that nationalism is again reaching second stage. This is stage 1, this is stage 2. Can you imagine the process I'm telling you? First is this unity, and thereafter this unity getting expressed in symbols and concepts. And that is the basic point, that the press will play a very important role in India, where the press will now try to push certain symbols, certain concepts. The concept that the British is just a big looter, this concept is going to become a major concept of what we call as economic nationalism. Economic exploitation will become a concept which is going to link all of us. Simple to simple point is unity should be there. You and me are united by a shared history and a future. But in this classroom, what is the symbol of our unity? In this classroom, if we were a nation, what expresses our unity? Yes. What expresses our unity is either me or Byju's exam prep. Basically, that logo which you see here is what links you and me. What links you and me? We have a shared history, we have a shared future. But if I don't express my unity, then I don't think nationalism is getting expressed. Getting my point? Getting my point? First 2 points. Now, the third and the last is when this unity and these symbols lead to collective action, we believe that nationalism is rising in a country. What do you mean by collective action? You and me are together. You and me have a shared future. You and me are united for the flag. But if it came to right now fighting for our nation at our borders, will we all step up? Yes or no? We will. And this is called collective action. Action for the nation. We all contribute day in, day out, without even knowing, as a collective action to this nation. What makes India a 5 trillion economy in the future is you and me coming together and acting collectively. But if I had to say it in a nationalistic perspective in British India, people get united via shared history and future. They start to realize that what actually links us is the shared history of India. They start to express it through symbols such as the Bharat Mata, for example, the national flag, the national anthem, the anthems, the symbols, Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, Bose. These become symbols of unity. But it is only when the people were ready to stand in front of a lathi charge of a British officer for the Rowlatt Act to be taken away, when Lala Lajpat Rai was beaten to death saying, "Simon, go back," that was when we were collectively acting. That was when collectively acting. If all of us are together, if all of us have unity, but we don't want to act, then it is not nationalism. Only when we are ready to act, we basically are a rising nationalistic consciousness. Getting my point? Sabka saath, sabka vikas, sabka prayas. Very good. Can we agree to this concept? Then I'll tell you how in India this actually happened. Okay. Understood? See, I am giving you a working definition. You will not find this definition anywhere else. Anywhere else. This is a working definition. Now, I'll show you a magic, or I'll show you a concept which you will actually think. See, you will not get a question, discuss nationalism. That's not polity optional. Listen to me. I'll actually show you how each and every module I've covered and how each and every movement we've gone through basically is step by step a ladder to nationalism. Can I do that? We now understand that there needs to be collective action, there needs to be sense of belonging, and there needs to be the concept of unity. Now, if you look at it, basically, what have we done? We've done advent of European, we've done expansion of British, we've done economic exploitation, then we did education and consolidation, then we did socio-religious reform, and thereafter we did resistance to Raj and 1857. Yes, this is what we've covered. Yes or no? Very good, Virendra. Very good. Very encouraging. Now, if you look at it, each of these steps add to the larger concept of nationalism. It is not a joke that nationalism emerges in 1857. I'll tell you how. See, advent of Europeans and British expansion. These two processes united India politically under the British, and the fragmented nature of polity was gone. Now, the next step was economic exploitation. We started to share one thing in common. We all were exploited by the British at all levels. So now there is shared concept. Now, what education policy did was it created the actors and men and women who will decode the exploitation of India and unite people. The ICS, the railways, we came under direct control and one rule. Railways, we became united geographically, very quick movement of information and people. Socio-religious reform movement was the way we first expressed collective action. We were united to change the society of India, and therefore resistance to Raj not systematic, but the rising realization of exploitation. This is the second moment of non-systematic collective action. Now, if you look at it, now do you see the master plan Now do you see that every step which the British took towards exploiting India actually was also a step towards their death? Each and everything which they did effectively produced the same process which is going to end their rule. It is going to end their rule. From uniting us politically to exploiting us and giving a shared sense of exploitation, to geographically and directly administering us, they united us. Then social religious reform movement, we used the symbols against sati, against widow remarriage, against the concept of child marriage, and we tried to act collectively, though not in a systematic manner. And modern education policy created the actors which are going to thereafter be the ones who will now challenge British rule. In their process of trying to find a loyal group, they also created the actors of their demise. And at the end of the day, by 1857, people were trying to express their nationalism systematically, but that will not happen. And that will only happen when there will be the rise of the Indian National Congress. Now do you understand the logic of the whole syllabus? Now do you understand the logic of modern India? Now do you understand why everything I've done with you is just building up till this moment? Education will create the social reformers. It will create Dadabhai Naoroji, R.C. Dutt, who will then say that the British are looters. 1885, I will come to that. Now, if all of this is done, what I want to do with you very simply is that we just need to consolidate and then we take a break. Please understand one thing. Whatever I've done with you till this point, is it clear? Is it now making sense? Because students, if they start to understand the logic of the syllabus, every moment, it's like a Christopher Nolan movie. You watch it once, you understand the climax, and when you go back, now everything starts to make sense. Same way, I have decoded colonialism for you. Somehow people think that nationalism is something which is independent to colonialism. But what I want to say is that this is a double-edged sword. The more they try to consolidate and exploit, the more they create the context for their own demise. It is colonialism which creates nationalism parallelly. Point taken, point clear. Then we take a break. Perfect. So let's take a break. What is the time? Exactly 6:30. Are the causes for the rise of nationalism in India? Standard question, very standard question which can come. The first cause basically is the political and geographical unity of India, of Indian subcontinent, via the conquest, consolidation, and processes and tools of consolidation. So what they do is that they politically and geographically unite us, be it the conquest, or I'll use the word expansion here. Conquest, expansion, and tools of consolidation. Any issue in this? That we technically get politically and geographically united? Yes. So we have subsidiary alliance, direct conquest, you have railways, you have ICS, whatever be the case. Second is that the exploitation of India via the economic policy in turn produced the shared experience of exploitation which linked everyone together. Basically, now something was common. We were geographically united previously also, but now something was common. What was common was that we all were exploited by the British, and that became a connecting link, which is called shared exploitation. Simply, if I went to 1857, 1858, 1860, for example, Bengal, and I asked them what happened to you, they will say exploited. Then you go to Madras, they will say exploited. I was also exploited, you were exploited, now we are brothers. We got exploited. So basically, all of us are connected by the shared exploitation. Our experience is the same wherever you go. The British were consistent everywhere. They were exploiting and destroying the countryside. They were exploiting and deindustrializing India. They were commercializing. They were doing everything. Basic point is, wherever you went, simple to simple point, shared exploitation was our shared future and our shared history. Now add to it modern education policy. Modern education policy, though initially intended to produce loyal Indian middle class, but the same middle class intelligentsia will become the spearhead, the movements. So basically, this is the backfiring of the larger plan of colonialism. These 3 points clear. Then I move to role of press and all. Clear? Now, everybody has to consent. Can we move on to the 4th and 5th point? Simple point is that political unity is added with exploitative nature of the British and modern education policy, which was now going to create loyal British Indians, but now the same loyal British Indians get influenced by Western thought, and they will become the spearhead of the movement. It's not a big issue. We've discussed it. We discussed it in modern education policy, that basically the same people they were created to remain loyal to the British will also be the same people who will in turn produce the larger problem of what we call as the nationalists. Basically, modern education policy should have produced loyal Indians who think like Britishers, but they also became nationalists in the end. So if you add the fourth point to it, the role of press in spreading and creating a space for shared vision of a nation. Shared vision of a nation. Simple point is that basically the press spread the concept of the new Western thought, basically freedom. I'm literally making notes for you. That's the basic point. Freedom, liberty. Don't write all of this. Freedom, liberty, and what we call as the concept of fraternity. Fraternity being coming together. And they will also create a space where the British could be exposed and criticized. Are these 4 points clear? Are they making sense? Yes. So let's do it from the PPT also. Factors behind the rise of associations and early nationalist organizations. First is the understanding of contradictions in Indian and colonial interest. I'm now explaining again everything through the points. So the second time we're doing it. So now people, the Indians realized that the purpose of rule was to exploit. And basically these two are incongruent to each other. Indian interest is development, colonial interest is exploitation. Political, economic, and administrative unification gives a shared sense of unity, and this will spread this feeling that basically there is an incongruence between Indian and colonial interests. Now, if you add to it, Western thought and education was also something which created the middle class intelligentsia, and they introduced the ideas of freedom, liberty, etc. This will be spread via press and literature. By 1877, 169 newspapers in vernacular Indian languages and circulated and reached to close to 1 lakh people all across India. The progressive character of socialist reform movement also showed that if we act collectively, we can change something. This is something which they also realize that if we all want to abolish sati, we can. If we all want widow remarriage, we can. So basically the power of collective action now was in front of them. And the rise of middle class intelligentsia, they will become the nationalists who will now challenge the British. Done, please. All this clear? All this clear? Yes? So now what we need to do is two things. It's called pre-INC polities, which is pre-Congress polities, which are regional in character, and they have their limitations, but they are the base. They are the base on which the INC is going to rise. The INC is going to rise. Education is important because it opens up your mind that there's something called French Revolution, something called freedom, liberty, exploitation. So, as I said to you that the 1857 revolt is a culmination, same way the process of INC formation in 1885 is also a culmination, and the culmination of pre-INC polities. So as it says here, Indian National Congress was not the first political organization. However, there were what are called organizations introduced by the members of wealthy aristocratic elements, local and regional in character. However, they will be the ones who will now start to develop a sense of collective action in that sense. Culmination means end. Can I now discuss pre-INC organizations with you? Pre-INC means before the INC was formed. Indian National Congress. I will discuss who set up, this setup, that setup. First, understand pre-INC. AOU, I will discuss safety valve theory with you. I will discuss everything with you. Simple point is, can we all agree to all the points I've discussed with you here, that these are the factors which led to the rise of nationalism? If there's a question which comes that why did nationalism rise in India in 1850 and or in the middle of 18th century, you will be able to do that, right? Done? Political and geographical unity is important, because if they will not be generated geographically, then there will be hindrance in transfer of ideas. Okay. Now, we have to discuss three regions: Bengal, Madras, and Bombay. And the first organization which emerged in India, is called the Banga Bhasha Prashashika Sabha, and no other than Raja Ram Mohan Roy in 1836 will be the one who will form it. The next year itself, there will be the second organization called Zamindari Association, but also called Landholders Society, which will be formed in 1837. And I'll tell you what is the concept. And by 1843, even before the revolt of 1857 happened, there was Bengal British India Society, but the factor which is common to all of them is that they want to reform colonialism and not reject colonialism. They are conservative in nature, and it's about personal or group interest. In this word Bengal British India Society, which is that word which stands out? Which is that word which stands out? Very good. British. British. So basically, even when they are forming their association, their India is British India. Their India is British India. Associates of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. I know Raja Ram Mohan Roy is dead in 1833, his associates, his friends, but he laid the foundation for that. Now, you need to remember this for the examination. So how do you remember this for the examination? You remember like this. See, Banga land, BBIS. Can you remember this? Banga land, BBIS. Role of these organizations in the revolt, nothing, zero, not squad, nothing. Banga land, BBIS. BBIS. You would have to remember their names, can come in the examination, could have to write their names, but at least early pre-INC organizations, I need to give you an acronym through which you can at least find them, which is Bangland or Bangaland, BBIS. Now, what is going to happen? So what is the tree we have discussed? Banga Bhasha, then Land Holders Society, and then you have the Bengal British India Society. What all of them want is just that the British should listen to them and should be able to help them. Can we all agree to this? These are called early political organizations. They are not called nationalists because they are not talking about nationalism. I'll tell you when they are called nationalistic bodies. These are early political organizations. Understand one thing. The INC did not fall from the sky, or it randomly one day people said, okay, let's form the INC. They all were part of a longer process of political associations coming together. Right now it is regional political associations, but they will be the one, or they will create the base which will allow for 72 members to meet in Bombay. This is the basic point. Right now the political organizations don't exhibit nationalistic character, but at least they are now allowing, or they are creating an understanding that people should come together to ask for something. So they're not here to reject colonialism. They're not nationalistic organizations. They are regional organizations with political interests. Is this point making sense? Please. Now, what happens is that Banga Bhasha over a period of time becomes redundant. However, they both will meet together to produce what is called British India Association. British India Association. And this is two conservative interests, the landlords' interests and concessions from the British, now getting culminated into one process. And please, you do not have to learn this, do not learn. But how do we know that they are technically talking about reforming? Because when they were sending petitions to the British Parliament that please help us, the demands showed that separate legislature, separate executive, reduce the salaries of higher officers, abolish salt duty and what is called custom duty and stamp duty. Or most of these demands will be met partially in 1853. But basically, their demands are not that go back British. It's about thoda adjust kar lo, that you change something, you give us a little bit more space, that you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to go anywhere. Just change some things. So the first set of organizations we've discussed, be it the Banga Bhasha, be it the Land Order Society, be it the Bengal India Society, or the Bengal India Association, exhibit a certain conservative character. They are political organizations, but they do not have the zeal or the enthusiasm or this purpose of removing the British. Can we agree to this? Because then comes the second set, which is different. Demand was not removing the British, reforming the British. Now, the next set of organizations which emerged in Bengal, and Bengal was where education spread the most, but the first major organization which will start to do or start to expose the British is going to be the East India Association, formed by Dadabhai Naoroji, and not in India, but rather in England or in London. So he will form an organization called the East India Association, and the purpose of that is going to be question and influence public men to promote Indian welfare. Now you see Dadabhai Naoroji, what he's doing. We'll discuss him very soon under economic nationalism. Dadabhai Naoroji, a Parsi nationalist and Parsi intellectual, very quick, he said that, okay, you are saying that you are here to help us. You are here to help us. Then let's do one thing. Let's discuss this in London. That are you helping us? That are you helping us? So now the first set of organizations want something from the British. These set of organizations raise new questions. They raise new questions. What should we do? So the basic point here is very simple, that the East India Association now is asking questions. Then by 1875, we have the India League, the Indian League. What is the difference between this and the organization we saw previously? In the name itself. The word British has been dropped. You see how the nature is changing. For them now, India exists as India, not as British India. So when Shishir Kumar Ghosh will form in 1875, the India League or the Indian League, he will be about encouraging the people to understand what the British is doing. Thereafter, the Indian Association of Calcutta, which will later be named as the Indian National Association, will be again formed by two very important personalities coming from Bengal, which is Anand Mohan Bose, A.M. Bose, and Surendranath Banerjee. Basic point is, now there was a movement away from the pro-British concept, and they were now becoming more and more anti-British. So let us consolidate what we've done till this point. Can we do that? Everybody is following me. I'm just telling you the organizations. You just need to know them for prelims purposes. That is it. So we had the Banga Bhasha. We had the Landholders Society. We had the Bengal British India Society. However, these two will merge together to produce the British India Association, and basically they will embody the conservative, pro-landlord, pro-British nature. On the other hand of the story, we have East India Association, which is no one else but Dadabhai Naoroji Naroji. Thereafter, you have Indian League, Shishir Kumar Ghosh, and then you have the Indian National Association, AM Anand Mohan Ghosh and Surendranath Banerjee. Now these two technically are in a way opposite spectrums. Basically they embody conservatism and they embody nationalism. So you can see that by 1870s there's a rising consciousness that we need to be Indian also and we need to be national also. So the two major words which emerge out of this whole story is that by 1870s a need was rising. It's Ghosh or Bose? Bose, yes, Bose. There's AM Ghosh also. Bose, very good. So there was a need which was rising for an all India association. Are you getting my point? Because they are specific to Bengal. So the early sparks are about reforming, are about conservatism, but they in turn also lead to the formation of an association which is now calling itself Indian and National. So are you able to see that how the base for the INC is getting created? For you here, the basic data is important. Whatever I've written on this slide is important because they can ask you in match the following. Are we able to figure out why am I having this discussion with you? Yes? I want everybody's consent, very, very silent. Come on. Need to tell me. I'll talk about INC formation. INC formation is 1885. We are slowly but surely moving towards that. Shishir. Okay. So we have a whole plethora of organizations which have come up in Bengal. And the Indian Association was the most important pre-Congress political party aimed to promote every legitimate means to get the political, intellectual and material advance of the people, create public opinion on political questions, and unify the people under a common program. This is called first uniting, then trying to act together. Now in Bombay, we have a very interesting and important organization. Don't have to remember the years. We have a very important organization which emerges, which is basically the Pune Sarvajanik Sabha. It will emerge in 1867 and it will know no one else but M.G. Ranade, who will basically create this organization to bridge the gap between the people and the government and ask for things. And by 1885, the same year the INC will be formed. Bombay also had one more body, which is called the Bombay Presidency Association, started by Badruddin Taibji and Firoz Shah Mehta and K.T. Talan. I'll tell you one thing very important. These names right now seem very, very odd to you or new to you. But by the time we come to moderates, extremists, these names will be on your fingertips because Badruddin Taibji, Firoz Shah Mehta, all are very, very important moderates. So basic point is that you can see that the base of all these organizations is going to be the base on which the INC is going to be formed. I am telling you this very, very clearly and very, very categorically because there's a very big myth about the INC. The myth is that basically it randomly came up. But I'm actually literally showing to you that it is before the INC that these organizations are creating the base for INC to rise. So, two organizations, Pune Sarvajanik Sabha and Bombay Presidency Association. Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, Bombay Presidency Association, PSS BPA is what is important for you. Then one standard organization which comes out of Madras and which is called the Madras Mahajan Sabha. The Madras Mahajan Sabha, 1884, and this will be by M. Vikramachari and B.S. Iyer and P. Anandacharlu. Now, very simply, what do you do with this information? What do you do with this information? Because thereafter we move to INC. What do you do with this information? This information has two purposes. For prelims, need to remember the names of organization and at least one member name. So at least one name you have to remember out of that who formed. And for the mains perspective, you need to understand this, that be it East India Association, be it the Indian League, or be it the British, rather not British, but Indian National Association, then the Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, the Bombay Presidency Association, and be it the Madras Mahajan Sabha. The simple point is they all create the base on which an all India political organization could rise. So will it be correct, will it be safe to say that INC is an culmination of the process of rising nationalism in India? Yes. So basically, INC was a culmination of rising regional nationalistic understanding and impulses, and that is what is going to lead to the INC formation. British India Association is not going to be in our list because it is not in the favor of nationalism. Okay. Yes, they technically set the stage. Now come and again, do not learn just to see what they were trying to do, these pre-INC Congress campaigns. They were actually talking about a lot of things. For example, they were not happy with the imposition of duty on cotton in 1875. Again, do not have to learn, just enjoy this. Then they wanted what is called Indianization of government services, that the number of members in the INC, the number of Indians in the ICS, which is the civil services, should increase. They were against Lord Lytton's Arms Act, that you need a license for arms. They were also against the Vernacular Press Act. I will discuss press with you separately, that the press has to be censored. they were saying that Indian immigration and the way plantation labor is used in tea plantations should also not be there. They should have a right to join the volunteers cause, but Indians should not be ever pushed into the army. They supported the Ilbert Bill, which said that a British judge could try, an Indian judge could try a European. They wanted an all India fund for political agitation, but this is technically dumb. They were asking the British to give them money to agitate against them. They're like, give me some money, I will now use that money to create an all India organization to go against you. Obviously, the British will not give it. They also campaigned in Britain for a pro-India party, that somebody would help India, so a pro-India party in Britain. From reduction of the maximum age, the basic point of the matter is that their major push was still that Indian civil services should be opened so that Indians could enter the ICS and therefore could become a major part of the governing process. We will discuss each of these moments separately also when I'll discuss press with you, when I'll discuss the Lytton policy, when I'll discuss Ripon. But this is the basic concept which is there, Ilbert Bill just said that an Indian judge, sessions judge could, a circuit judge could actually try a Britisher. British not officer, but a Britisher, which is an European. The basic point is, don't have to learn this. I'm giving you the taste, meaning that these organizations were not sitting. They were not randomly sitting there. They were also agitating against things. So have I successfully demonstrated and established that INC does not fall from the sky? It does not create itself on its own. It was rather a longer process of culmination. Yes? Very good. Now comes a very standard area of a mains question. See, we all know that the INC will be 72 members who will meet on 28th December 1885. A list of social reformers, journalists and lawyers will meet at the Indian National Union, as they used to call them initially, at the Gokuldas Tejpal Sanskrit College in Bombay. This conference will be renamed as the Indian National Congress, ominously as the INC. However, there was a very important personality there, which is called Alan Octavian Hume, who will be there at its formation. Now, this will raise a question with regards to the formation of the INC. What led to the formation of the INC? What is the role of A.O. Hume? Or was it a British conspiracy? Or was it formed by the British? Together, these questions are called safety valve theory. Can I discuss this with you? Can we discuss it? You understand this? Lightning conductor is the other side, of the story. We discuss safety valve. Lightning conductor is the other side of the story. Now, is everybody ready? Is everybody comfortable? Can we discuss something totally theoretical, purely theoretical? Have to understand this. Yashovarman did the same theory, but the way of saying it is different. Okay, listen to me. INC has been formed. They met the first time on 28 December 1885. But now, there's a Britisher standing there, A.O. Hume. It is believed that A.O. Hume was the organizer of the conference. He booked the hall also, and he was the one who created the initial structure of the INC. Now the question is, who is this A.O. Hume? A.O. Hume, Alan Octavian Hume, is an retired ICS officer, perceived as a liberal whose eyes were opened after 1857 brutality, and he was in favor